Hey, good Tuesday morning, Catalina Foothills Church. I am talking to you from the Atlanta airport, where I'm looking forward to hopping on a plane and heading back home in a little bit. So this week we're going to be looking at Romans chapter 11, and I'm going to read the first few verses for you. In this chapter and in this sermon this week, we're going to be talking about God's faithfulness to the Hebrew nation, God's faithfulness to the people of the Older Testament. Chapter 11, verse 1 reads, I ask then, has God rejected his people? By no means. For I myself am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham, a member of the tribe of Benjamin. God hasn't rejected his people whom he foreknew. Do you not know what the scripture says of Elijah, how he appeals to God against Israel? Lord, they've killed your prophets, they've demolished your altars, and I alone am left, and they seek my life. But what's God's reply to Elijah? God says, I've kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So too, at the present time, there is a remnant chosen by grace. But if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. So Paul is saying here, because of the amazing growth of the church among non-Jewish people, because of the explosion of nations pouring into the church, because of how the movement of God is looking less Jewish in Paul's day as he does his ministry, the question arises, has God forgotten his people? Has he broken with them? And the answer, Paul says, one of his favorite responses, by no means, by no means. And so Paul is saying, look, no, he hasn't rejected Israel. You want some evidence? First of all, look at me. He says in verse 1, I am an Israelite, a descendant of Abram, a member of the tribe of Benjamin. So Paul's saying, has God written off the Jews? No, I'm one. And secondly, he says, no, he foreknew them. And you know from the book of Romans that foreknew carries a connotation of loving, claiming, owning. And so he says, do you not know what this? And then he appeals to this historic thing where Elijah thought, oh, there's not many of your people who are following you, God. There's not many who are trusting you. And God says, I'm telling you, I keep for myself a remnant, and they are chosen by grace. So you see these themes of the faithfulness of God, of the steadfast love of God, of the fact that anyone who is in a relationship with God is in a relationship with God by grace and by the initiation of God, that God initiates relationships. Just as he did with Israel, he does with all who trust in him. And so that's some of the things we're going to be looking at. I hope you have a great week. Look forward to seeing you Sunday morning.